As you pursue what it is that you were made to pursue, distraction can either be your greatest friend or your greatest adversary. Most of us look at distraction as something that's a bad thing, and it can be, but it can also be used for your advantage. In this episode of School of Professional Design, we're going to be looking at how you can find it, remove it, and uproot it, these weapons of mass distraction, and how you can intelligently deploy it. Before we do, I have to start with a story. The year was 2005, and I was some high-powered, business executive. I wasn't that high-powered. I thought I was cool. I was driving what was my cool car. It was a 2000 Chrysler 300M, emerald green, metal rims. I thought I was the cat's meow. Loved that car. And I was headed back from several meetings and coming back home. And on the way home, there was a distraction. The distraction probably wasn't too dissimilar to something that you've seen, but the appropriateness of the timing, I'm sure you're going to find, was despicable. You see, I was on my BlackBerry playing chess, and I decided that going 35 miles per hour in traffic that was relatively slow was a great time for me to learn a new move in chess on a BlackBerry. Distracted driving is a horrible thing, and on that day, I found out. I looked up from a move just in time to see all of traffic stopped in front of me. I swerved, hit a curb, and ruined my cool car forever. I wouldn't get it fixed. I wouldn't drive it again. And when I sold it, I only got a fraction of the value that I paid for it. You are also on a road. You are on a journey. And distractions, just like my BlackBerry, are there all the time. Sometimes it comes because of a lazy mind. Sometimes it comes because you're worn out. There's so many reasons that they come. And the truth is that we can make up excuses. The problem is, if I had hit a human being or someone's property, would anyone have felt that I was justified in learning one more chess move? I don't think so. And so as we look at this, I want you to think about what is your main mission and what are your distractions. So we're going to look at the things that are maybe keeping you off the road, off the journey, perhaps wrecking you consistently. And then what are the other things that are, how can we use these things to help you? But before we get into that, I have to talk to you about what a distraction is. Now, according to the dictionary, I like to look up definitions, and I use etymology all the time. It's a thing that prevents someone from giving full attention to something else. Sometimes it can be an extreme agitation of the mind or emotions. Maybe you've been talking to someone at some point or another, and they weren't paying attention to you. Not complete attention. Maybe you've been that way. You've had your 2 or 3 or 4 or 5-year-old tugging at your pant leg, wanting your attention, wanting to tell you the story of their day, and you were mentally still at work. Distraction. Why do we do this? Well, we do this because we're not seeing or we have forgotten the main mission. I'm going to define distraction as this: anything that gets you off the main story. Anything that stops traction, it is a distraction towards the main storyline. We were going to go surfing, myself and 2 of my sons. We had a good swell a couple of days ago, and we were getting ready. And as we went out, the older of the 2 sons was gone. He took the car. The other son said, "Dad, he got pulled into a side mission." I said, "What?" "Yeah, there were these old people. They were walking by, and someone just was too tired to get home. They asked him for a ride, and so he was going to take them for a ride home." I'm very happy and proud that my son decided that the side mission, the side quest, was more important than the main mission during that time. But it still was a distraction towards what we were trying to get accomplished. We were trying to get it in the water together. And that put us back about 20 minutes. So distractions can be positive or negative. But when I look at these things, I'm asking you to ask yourself, is this contributing to, or is this pulling me away from my main storyline? Now, the only way for you to even know what the main storyline is to examine what the main storyline is. And the more clear you make it, the clearer your vision is towards that, the less likely you are to fall into negative distractions. Let's actually look at some of those real quick. Social media, right? Biggest negative distraction. TV, Netflix, binging, big distractions, right? Sometimes reaching out to people or letting people reach out to you at times where you should be off limits is a distraction. Sometimes it has to do with binge behaviors, habitual behaviors. Could do with like their eating distractions, alcohol distractions. Work can be a distraction. Sometimes I've known people who've been going through mourning in times of loss, and they throw themselves into work as a distraction, meaning it's taking them away from the traction of the main storyline, which for them at that point should have been healing. Toxic relationships can be a distraction. Pursuits that are undesirable can become distractions. Now, when we look at those things, I will say this, let's not judge those. Let's not look at that and say, hey, it's all bad. What are the reasons behind it? That's what I like to look at, because you might be trying to escape from something. What is that? What are you trying to escape from? You might be afraid to fail. Maybe you don't have a clear vision. And for those of us who understand professional design, this is one of the reasons we have this, is so we don't get pulled in by weapons of mass distraction. Now, the 10 Ps will help you to remove the weeds of distraction from your life. That is knowing your personality and who you are, what you are made in the image of, and how you function and operate. That is knowing your pursuit and knowing what you're going after. That removes distraction. Knowing your powers, so you're not focusing on your weaknesses, but your strengths, removes distraction. Understanding your people, the problem you solve, and the process which you are good at solving it can remove distraction when you're committed to that, because the commitment is called a promise. Your promise can remove distractions, because you can't promise to do one thing if it competes against a bunch of other things. So your promise begins to remove those. The way you plan and the way you practice, all of these things work together, and I believe can keep us from distraction, but we can, from sometimes the continual wearing of hard work, find ourselves in a place to where we're worn down and we're trying to escape from something. Maybe distraction is telling us you need a break, or maybe when we're afraid of failing, maybe there's something you should be looking at. Perhaps it's from low energy. Maybe you actually are fatigued. And so when you find yourself open to mass distraction, be aware of and be alert to what creates that. Overwhelm. I can't tell you how many people I work with that overwhelm causes them to not deal with anything, but to run to a place of distraction. What are you seeking? You're seeking control. So we're looking at some of the loose pieces right now. I want to speak to the professional for a moment, because I believe this, that if you want to know what your distractions are, you need to know what the main mission is. You need to remove, I don't want to say remove side quests, because they are beneficial. And for those of you who are younger than, let's just say, 45 or older than 45, a side quest is a part of a video game where they would build something in to keep your interest, so that when you were maybe not trying to destroy the main enemy in a video game, you had other missions you could accomplish, so that maybe you get some cool costume or a great sword, or there's all kinds of neat reasons that people do side quests in video games. In regular life, though, a lot of times it's because we're afraid of taking on the main quest. So what is the main quest? I say it is your work. Now, work is not going to be defined as the place you go. It's not even the thing that you do to get the stuff that you need for food and shelter. It's not only that. Work is the value you bring so that others will compensate you in some form, usually money, not always. So what I like to do to remove distraction is if you're in sales or business ownership or entrepreneurial minded or like really anything can gather all kinds of stuff and responsibilities you feel like you should do. Those could be distractions. But the way to eliminate that is to identify specifically the result that you promise, the thing that you say you deliver. So what is that? Well, if you teach, you could think that it's you talking on a stage or not a stage, in front of a classroom. So if you teach, you think that's your promise, but it's not. That's not your promise. Your promise is to help people to learn. So anything else, including standing in front of a classroom, could be a distraction. So do you see how that frees you to come up with other ways to accomplish that? If you are in business and you are trying to, let's just say you're in sales and your job is to bring people in. That's your job. What is the promise you're delivering, the result you're delivering? It is people who say yes. People who say yes. Getting people to agree and say yes. That's your main promise. But I have to be on social media. I have to write this book. I have to be listening to podcasts. I have to be improving myself. I have to be, all of these other things could be true and yet still a distraction. And the way that we examine that is to simply ask, what is the main promise? What is the main result I deliver? In his book, Profit First, Mike Michalowicz talks about what he calls the queen bee role. And when I consult with businesses that have multiple layers of management and people executing, I go back to this because it's the simplest way of looking at it. And we say this, what is the main work that our company accomplishes? So what is our main promise that we make to the world? The one thing that we do that no one else can really compete on. What is that one thing? Maybe we make computers, okay, for these kind of people that does this kind of thing. That's what we do. Great. For that to be true, what is the one thing you must do? What is the one promise you must keep? And so I work actually down from the executive all the way down to recruiters and trainers and HR people, and all of them have 1 to 2 promises that they have to make so that the company can maintain their promise. And ultimately, I guess what I'm getting at is that your work is simple. Work is what creates the result of your promise. And when you look at it, it is simple. I'm not telling you that you can't do it 1,000 different ways, but ultimately, you must deliver on your promise. And so that's the whole goal here, is that we say, okay, I need to know what that is, and all other things could be a distraction. And perhaps when I'm committed to this promise, it might open up new avenues and new pathways for us to make that happen. So what is your work? Your work is the reasoning here. It's the value you bring to others. I will say that you might have multiple parts of the promise. I was listening to one of my mentors from the past. I haven't spoken to him in a long time, but Rory Vaden said this. He said, if you're a speaker, you think that your promise or the thing you have to deliver on is to speak on stage. He said, and that's true, but actually, that's not your only job. Your job isn't just to do awesome on stage. Your job is to get the job so that you can speak on stage. And so he clarifies for would-be speakers that they also need to find ways to get the speaking job so that they can do the job. So you might have a couple of different facets of what you're doing, but being clear on what has to happen in order for your work to happen is super important. Now, what do you do if you spot a distraction? If there's anything that gets in your way, I call them weapons of mass distraction, anything that gets in your way, in the way of deep work, in the way of you doing what you say that you'll do. First off, I want to know, does it contribute to your work? Okay. Next off, I like to make friends with it. And so let's just say you find yourself always talking to people or taking a call when maybe you shouldn't be. Maybe you find yourself binging on YouTube or on podcasts or reading. It's like you're doing something that you know that you shouldn't do. Write the thing down, and rather than hate it, make friends with it. We're going to use that friend distraction later. Now, if it's overall something that you don't want to be a part of your work, those times, make it more difficult to get to. So if it's an app, remove it from your home screen. Put it in the way back part of your phone. If it is, I had a friend who, well, he was actually a client, and he didn't want to be distracted by the television whenever he went on work trips. So the first thing he would do is actually either request to unplug, or he would unplug the TV itself so that he didn't end up watching it when he was on work trips. All he did was remove the plug. So now when he got the urge to actually watch TV, he had to have the extra step of going to plug it in. And sometimes it's that one extra step that will stop you from going down a rabbit trail you didn't want to go down. Right? And I think we've all been there in one way or another. So make it more difficult. I don't think that making war against it is great. I do think replacing it with healthy alternatives. So if you used to snack on chips, you don't have chips, you make it harder to access chips. Of course, you can still drive to the store and get potato chips, but maybe you replace that with something that's still crunchy. Maybe it's maybe it's carrots or cucumbers, and you have access to that. It's there in your space. You will find yourself doing the thing that you've given yourself access to do. The things that you make easy determine your habits. Do you want water? Get one of those big giant buckets that people carry around with water in it. Drink your water. Give yourself access. And if that's not enough, sometimes maybe spice it up, make it fun, make it something that you're excited to look at, to do, or whatever. I like to write, and in order to write, I like to have a nice pen. I use a fountain pen, and I keep my journal right here, so I'm ready to write at any moment. So give yourself access to those things. Make the things that you don't want to do more difficult. The things that you do want to do, make it easy. Now, how can we use a distraction? Well, to quote Jack Nicholson in the movie The Shining, he said, "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." And he probably said that 50,000 times, or at least he wrote it 50,000 times in the movie. And that's true. It's true. We're going to take a little bit of instruction from The Shining. And the truth is, if you're only going to do work, you're missing out. You see, if you are going to be effective at any type of work, rest must be a part of your process. And so, as I tell many of my coaching clients, I would say, find a way to embrace rest as work. And I'm talking to you who you always feel like you have to be on, you always feel like you have to be producing, that your only value is to make something or to make something happen. I know who you are because I am you, and I've been there, and boy, that can actually distract you from your main mission when you get home. And my main mission when I get home is to bring the joy, to be happy, to be joyful, to be fun, to be someone that my family wants to be around. I want to be that guy. And I can't do it if I'm giving some of my traction to stuff that's not in front of me. And I know that if you work from home, I know that that's not as easy done as it is said, but I will say, find a way. Find a way to not bring multiple things into the same space. All work and no play makes you a dull person. Have you ever thought about vacation? How do you feel when you come back from vacation? What do you do before you go on vacation? Most people get a lot of stuff done. And then when they get back, they come back refreshed, recharged, re-energized to approach their day with new vim, new vigor, new vitality, and they're sharper, they're better. Why? Because their brain didn't have to carry the weight. Sometimes carrying something for too long or doing too much work wears one out. And we lose the opportunity to see the bigger picture. We see less options. And so that's why we take vacations. Have you ever thought even of what the word vacation means? It means vacate, to leave, to shut down. Go to South America or Europe and watch what these people do for siestas, for the afternoon nap. And you're like, but I have good money I want to give to you. And they're like, I don't care because you're a distraction from what I really want, which is right now a nap and tea or whatever it is that they do in the afternoon. It's not something that we commonly do here in America, but some of us could and should. So let's actually talk about some healthy distractions that you can bring into your environment, some things that you should be using, and I'm going to talk about when to use them. Let's talk about that. I think about this like the Control-Alt-Delete button, or as you might get if you call in with a technical support question, they're always going to ask you what? Did you restart your computer? Did you restart your phone? Do a hard power cycle. And guess what? Actually, a lot of times, a reset is all it takes. And so in your life and in my life, sometimes a reset is all it takes for us to actually get what we want, for us to come back sharper, to come back better, and to produce and to actually have an answer maybe that we toiled on all day long. A lot of the greatest inventions, like the missing element, came to them in a dream. Edison credits a dream for finding the exact filament that would fit in the light bulb for the incandescent bulb. I can't remember if it was Orville or Wilbur, credited a dream for delivering the missing piece for the powered man flight, the first powered man flight in Kitty Hawk. There was a piece that came to him in a moment of rest. And some of the greatest inventors and creators that we've ever known used rest as a means of production, even in the most difficult circumstances. Winston Churchill, during the bombs dropping all over his country and all over Europe during World War II, during all of that uncertainty, realized that he couldn't always just focus on the difficult thing in front of him, that he had to have a distraction. So he painted. He would lead a country, make great speeches, and paint. And it doesn't seem right. And as I say that, there's some of you right now that would have a hard time justifying a distraction. And a distraction could be music, could be art, it could be a hobby, it could be walking, it could be exercise, it could be a number of things. But when you are only focused on producing, you're only focused on the work, you sometimes forget that rest can be a part of that work. Not Winston Churchill. Albert Einstein, when he hit a roadblock when trying to figure out important parts of his theories and equations, he would go play the violin and let his brain work. It's almost like there's like this relaxation and this trust of connection with of the human being with the divine, realizing that genius was something that was already there. The answers were already there. Sometimes we just have to coax them out. Ben Franklin used rest as a strategy, used cat naps as a strategy. He'd fall asleep, hand on a rock, and when he fell asleep, the rock would drop into the frying pan. He woke up a little bit energized and sometimes with a new idea. He would write down whatever that idea was. So lots of different ways we can approach it. Lots of people have discovered the power of these things. And so I'll give you a few that you can use as weapons of mass distraction, things that you can utilize on your behalf. So naps. you can take naps. Is a way to create a distraction, meaning you're focused, nap. Wake up, focus. Okay, so naps, yes. Adult people can take naps. Elon Musk would sleep in this place. Now, I think he's also, the story is with him, it was the crazy hours, but also, like, if you look, he would have cots in his workspace. So when you're tired, rest. Sometimes it's physical rest. What else? Well, I want you to go back to that friend list, that distraction list we mentioned earlier. And I want to see if we can use any of that productively. Let's imagine it was YouTube. Okay, is YouTube bad? It could be good if it happened in appropriate timing and sequences. And so it's not the habit or the thing that's bad. It's just the place that it happens that's bad. When I was driving in my earlier story, it wasn't chess that was bad. It was the sequence with which I did the events that was bad. It was I was doing that during driving. That's what made it bad. If I was doing it at home, great. If I was doing it at home when it was time to pay attention to a child, not great, right? But the thing itself is not bad. So I want you to look back at that list, the list you created, the things, the little ditches you fall into, and ask yourself, is there any way I can use this as a reward? Or is there any way I can use this in between productive periods? Science says we have 2 productive periods a day in terms of like productivity science. We have a big one. We have a trough where we have low energy, and then we have a smaller amount of focus. We really effectively, out of an 8-hour day, typically have about 3 to 5 hours of true focus. And so if you know that, take advantage of that and put your most important activities loaded into those moments, and never the distractions. Distractions we put into the trough moments. We put into the beginning moments. We put at the end. So back to the ideas. We have napping. We have music. We have walks. We have talking to people. We have all the things on your list. We have books. We have reading. We have all of these things that actually can add enjoyment to your life. And so all I would say is to set an alarm, and either an alarm where like I will only do this task until the alarm sounds. I have timers everywhere. Here's a timer, and I set the timer, and I hit go. And once I hit go, I only focus on that task during that time. At the end, I give myself my break. And so if you are someone who is dead set on never being distracted, I'm telling you, you're missing the boat. You're missing out on pleasure, and the pleasure that can actually give you greater sharpness to what you're working, because at the end of that task, at the end of your deep work for an hour or 2 or 3, 1 to 3 hours of deep work, you deserve some sort of break. Give yourself a break. Love on yourself a little bit. And is it better to have healthier things? Yeah, of course. Right? I'm going to leave that up to you as an adult, but I don't think that we have to just label something as horrible, bad, and hate it, and because the thing that you resist is what will persist. Jesus said, if you find yourself in an argument or at odds with an adversary, try to agree with your adversary on the way to court, lest he bring you and deliver you up before the judges, and they take everything. And so I don't think that we always have to look at things that aren't great about what we're doing and just automatically try to resist it, fight it, bury it, cover it. I think we can use that. And so those are some of the things. I will say this, the class earlier I mentioned, and I'll probably put together a class on this one. And this is for those of you who are open to it. You can actually create a pattern or almost like I would say a vacation that's informative. I call it a sojourn. And a sojourn is when you wander purposely without much of an agenda, and you're open to the clues that are around you. You don't have any final resting point, any place you're trying to get to. It's just you follow clues in life. My wife calls them God winks, and you see what, I don't want to say what messages are around you in creation itself, but something like that. And so I'm writing a book. I'll probably do a class on it. It has added so much volume in my life when we show up in areas and we just look for things that are meaningful to us, and we connect the dots. There have been amazing things that have happened with us here. I think I've opened another can of worms that we won't get into now, but I be on the lookout for it. For now, I just want you to do this. I want you to understand your work. List out the main thing that you do that you think only you can do. And if your finances aren't where you want them to be, especially focus in on this. What's the main thing you want to do for the people that you're here to serve? Go back into School of Professional Design and in the library, log in, and definitely for you, if this is a struggle for you, look up your people, your puzzle, your promise, and your process. Those four can give you clarity here. So find your work, zero in on what that is, and list out things that could be possibly a distraction. Now, the other part is schedule in distractions. So remove them and then purposely put them into place. You will find you're happier, you're more productive, and work doesn't feel like a grind. So go ahead. Don't be afraid of resetting, resting, and finding distraction. It's okay. We were made for it. Embrace it and do it the right way. And we will see you on the journey.